Hi, this is Greg McKee coming at you again, and I have another lesson, another sermon that I'd like to teach on, preach on today. And the name of the title of my sermon is going to be How to Overcome Adversity. The scriptures that I'll be using will be coming out of Proverbs 23:7, and all these scriptures will be coming from the New King James Version. 23:7 says, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he." Proverbs 4:12, which says, "Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life." Matthew 21:22, which says, "And whatsoever thing you ask in prayer, believing you will receive." Isaiah 55:11, which says, "So shall my word be that goes forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and prosper in the thing for which I sent it." And Romans 8:19, which says, "For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God." Now, typically, all human beings operate in 5 realms: spirit, soul, body, finances, and relationships. And those are what I call the 5 realms of existence. Now, a person cannot live fully in the body without having food and comfortable clothing, shelter, and things like this, rest and recreation. We cannot live fully in the mind unless we have books and time to study them, without opportunity to travel, and without intellectual companionship. In order to live fully in the soul, a person must have love, and love is denied fullest expression by poverty. Each of us needs each other to fulfill our purpose, and that's why relationships are so important. And finally, we need to be connected in our spirit with the world around us, with the universe, and with the spiritual realms that we know, in order to prosper as well. Now, wealth is needed, like I said, is needed in all of these areas in order for us to fulfill our purpose. Because we use finances in order to prosper in this earth, in order to prosper, we need financial wealth. But gaining wealth, however, is not a matter of one's environment, believe it or not. All right. Other than being able to deal with people that you need to deal with to help fulfill your purpose, gaining wealth is not an issue. All right. And your environment is not an issue. Getting wealth is not a matter of talent or skill. I've seen some of the most skillful people who are skilled in whatever area you could think of, and because they have lacked opportunity, they've never been able to fulfill their skills or their gifts or callings. All right, no one is prevented from gaining wealth due to a lack of capital. All right, you may be the poorest person on this planet and deeply in debt. All right, you may have neither friends nor influence nor resources, but if you begin to do things in a certain way, you must be able to gain wealth. Wealth will come. Right? If you're in the wrong business, you can get in the right business. If you're in the wrong location, you can always get into the right location. No one is prevented from gaining wealth because they're being held back by another person, such as an employer. They are only held back because they are not doing things in a certain way. So you must begin to live in harmony with the laws governing this universe. And opportunity, hold on. Opportunity will always present itself to you. Right? Like the universe is actually friendly towards us, right? To do this, but however, one reason why we never prosper is because, like the old saying goes, if you do the same thing the same way and expect different results, that's called insanity. Right? And the universe is filled with potential. Right? Success is not having everything you need when you need it. Success is having access to everything you need when you need it. All right, it is up to us to be able to get that access and to, the resources that we do have, to utilize them and use them so that we can prosper. Right, the universe is made up in such a way that its creative substance will never run out. The universe is filled with so much creative energy and potential that it is impossible for it to run out. Now, let's look at the book of Genesis real quick. I want to explain something about the thought as being a creative force. If you look at the book of Genesis, chapter 1, in verse 3, it says, "And God said." In verse 6, "And God said." In verse 9, "And God said." In verse 11, "And God said." In verse 14, "And God said." In verse 20, "And God said." In verse 24, "And God said." In verse 26, "And God said." In verse 29, "And God said." Now, one thing about the Bible is it's commonly known among theologians that when something is repeated 3 times or more, it's extremely significant. Now, in its original translation, some translators say that in the Bible, when it says, "Then God said," it should actually be translated, "And God thought." All right? And just like the Bible says, "And so shall my word be that goes forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void. It shall prosper in the thing where I sent it." That's actually God thought. Now, in verse 6, again, it says, "Then God said." And then in verse 7, it says, "Then God made." In verse 14, it says, "Then God said." In verse 16, excuse me, "Then God made." In verse 20, it says, "Then God said." In verse 22, "Then God blessed." Now, before I go to that, though, I want to say, "And God said, and God made," though. In the verses where it said, "And God said, and God made," God thought something, and then whatever God thought, God, the universe manifested. Now let's look at the Genesis 1:26. It says, "Then God said," and then in 1:22, no, I'm sorry, in 1:20 it says, "Then God said," and then in 1:22 it says, "Then God blessed." In 1:26 it says, "Then God said." In 1:28 it says, "Then God blessed." In 1:29 it says, "Then God said." And then in chapter 2, verse 3, it says, "Then God blessed." Now, there's a significance about that as well, because in the previous verses it says that God said and then God made. And yet in those last 3 verses that I just spoke of, it says God said and then God blessed. And what that signifies is that when God thought something, then God created it. But God took it one step further. The things that God created, God also blessed. And the word blessed in the Hebrew actually means to call out of hidden potential. So in other words, the things that God created, God also gave the opportunity for the things that He created to also have creative power. It's because the word blessed means call out of hidden potential. So the things that God created, God gave the ability. God gave the things that He created the ability to recreate as well. So before anything was made or created, it was first in the mind of God to do so. Once it was in God's mind, purpose was fulfilled by potential. Now, in Isaiah 55:11, first there was one original formless thing for which all things were made, and then secondly, like I said before, it was joined with potential thought. It began to be created and manifest itself. And thirdly, a person can form things in their thought, and by impressing their thought on formless substance can cause the thing that they thought about to be created. Right? So to look upon the appearances of poverty will produce corresponding forms in your own mind, unless you hold the truth that there is no poverty. There is only abundance. I heard a story one time about a man who, there was an experiment where a man got these 2 vials, and in one vial he put the word love, in another vial he put the word hate, and he put some kind of virus or some kind of substance in each of the vials, and the one that said love, it actually reproduced good things. In the one that said hate, it actually was destructive. So the words that you the things that you think, the words that you speak, and even the things that you write down, the things that you perceive, comes to fruition. So it's very important that the things that we think and the things that we say, that we watch it, because the things that we think and say create manifested force. Now, to think that health, when surrounded by the appearance of disease, or to think riches when in the midst of poverty, requires power. But whoever acquires that power becomes the master of your own mind and the master of your destiny. The person can conquer fate in anything they want. And as I said, the universe wants for us to allow it to bring us wealth. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says that in Deuteronomy 28, it says basically that if we follow the commandments of God, and then it says all these things will overtake you, and then it has a whole list of different things that overtake you. So the things that you speak, the things that you think on, the things that you say will eventually overtake you. And I'm running out of time right now, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this lesson and continue it on. Thank you. Have a great day.